Hey, everybody, welcome to Called Up the Prospects podcast. I'm Chris Peters, joined by my co host from Elite Prospects, Cam Robinson. Cam, we are back. We are not rested. We are not ready, but we are back from the World Juniors. Buddy, it was great to see you out there. We were able to do a show out there. So if you missed that one, make sure you go check that out. But Cam, let's get into it, man. First of all, how are you feeling after 2 straight weeks in Ottawa?
Better than Stephen Ellis. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling all right. I'm catching up on some sleep. I'm getting some fresh baby cuddles, which I was missing for a couple weeks there. Back at the rink with my kid, early morning hockeys. They don't wait for anyone, right? So it's right back into it. But happy to do a little post mortem here today. Hey, a little reflection on all the stuff we got to see and what's going to change, and then right back into the grind of the scouting season, right?
I know, like the second half is here, and it just feels like the season almost just started. But here we are at the end of World Juniors and a new draft season to talk about. We are going to talk about the NHL draft today, especially the guys that were at the World Juniors. As Cam mentioned, we're going to do a little post mortem. We'll talk a little bit about Team USA's win, some of the other takeaways from the World Juniors. Also, going to talk a little bit about the CHL trade deadline. A lot of big trades involving big name prospects, and Cam has kind of been one of the guys that has really been breaking those stories and just kind of get a little extra analysis from him. Also, really excited. The AHL All-Star rosters presented by FloHockey were announced on Wednesday. We're going to get into that a little bit too, because there's a lot of big name prospects that are going to be in the Coachella Valley for the All-Star weekend, which you will be able to see on FloHockey. So we will talk about that as well. And then just get into some of the other things like Beyond Belief. And we've got a fun this player or that player at the end as we do our one big, you got to choose one at the end of the show. So we've got a good one for that. So you'll want to stay tuned, especially if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan. So because you guys seem to really care about that stuff. So we're going to talk about it. But anyway, let's start with the World Juniors. And Cam, we were both there. We were both able to witness Team USA winning the gold medal, the first time ever going back to back. They did win in overtime against Finland in a tight game, a game that they had to come back from 2 down. And then Teddy Stiga scored the game-winning goal in overtime. First of all, I still don't have any way of getting the Freebird guitar solo out of my head. I imagine that you might be the same, but let's talk a little bit about Team USA and what made that team successful in that tournament. So just your general thoughts about why they won.
Oh, mama, don't you cry. That's what stuck in my head this week. I love that. And that's one of the best traditions in hockey, and that's coming from a Canadian. I think that's the peak of post celebration victories, getting in there and shouting that out. But that American team, right? We called it. We are geniuses. We saw it right from training camp. As soon as they named their roster, we're like, that's a gold medal winning roster right there. And we I had some doubts down 3-1 to the Finns. The Finns were outplaying them. They were converting on their scoring chances. And I think the Americans, they got a little lucky with that 3-2 goal that really kind of reinvigorated them. Then they get the 3-3 to tie it going into the third, and then they had the momentum, right? And then it took an extra period. And Teddy Stiga, right? What a beauty that kid is too. First shot of the tournament, just buries it, and like ice in his veins too, right? Mishandles a little bit that stretch pass on the break and still corrals it, still opens up the 5-hole and slips her in there with the cheeky little slide in. Big Teddy Stiga fan. I think they were a good team, right? And the whole thing there is that they were a team, which I think was a big issue for another club that was there, another nation that was there that wasn't acting as a team so much. And so for the Americans, I think that they utilize their players well, effectively to their strengths. I think everybody was kind of lining up into formation on what can I do to help this team win? I'll do it. I'll lay down block shots. I'll punish. I'll eat cross checks to the mouth, even if I'm the captain. They all kind of took their roles and they embraced them and they played like a team and they came away champs and they were the best team there. And hard to argue with that kind of success that they've had the last couple of years. And what we're seeing that these American programs are doing is that the USA is on the up here in hockey.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think that Teddy Stiga scoring the game-winning goal is really indicative of that team win that you talked about, because really what I found fascinating about that gold medal game is that in the third period we saw Team USA really expand its bench. They actually
Mhm.
got more guys. Like Austin Bernovic wasn't taking a ton of shifts at the beginning of the game, but there he is in the third period doing a lot there. So I think that was really impressive to watch because those guys were pretty, just pretty involved in the game at that point. It allowed them to be fresher, I think, when they did shorten that bench back up in overtime. But then they throw Teddy Stiga out there, who was a healthy scratch in the first game. So that was more that kind of team win. I also think, they didn't overly rely on Trey Augustine, who didn't have his best, I think, for a lot of that tournament. He played really well against Canada. He played really well against Czechia. He gave up some uncharacteristic goals in some of the other games, including in the gold medal game. And so, they were able to do it because of that. And I think a couple of the reasons, we talked a lot about the lack of defensive depth was going to be a problem. Well, the guys that stepped up, that needed to step up, Cole Hudson and Zeev Buium. We're going to talk about both of them. And I want to talk about Cole Hudson first because he leads the tournament with 11 points. He's the first defenseman to lead the World Juniors outright with 11 points in the tournament. There have been a few defensemen that have tied for the lead, but he leads it outright. He scored the game-tying goal against Finland. He scored a goal against Canada. He scored a goal in the prelim against Finland. It seemed like every goal that he scored mattered, and that he also was making a lot of great plays. This was a breakout tournament for Cole Hudson. Just what did you see from him there? Because I knew, and you knew too. I mean, we know how good he is. The thing is that how he stepped up in this tournament to me was the big difference and the separation and why it was such a breakout. He had some of his best moments, I think, that I've seen him play. I think he's played his best hockey at the World Juniors. So just curious about what you saw from him and just what this says about him as a prospect as well.
Yeah, by far the best I've seen him live on tape, whatever. And, live views, I probably had 15 plus views of him live before this event. And, I've seen him jack points, right? U18s, he probably had 10, 11, 12 points there. I didn't even vote him as one of the top defensemen in that tournament. Like, I thought that EJ Emery was the better defenseman because he was cleaning up all of Cole Hudson's mistakes. At this tournament here, I saved a spot on the blue line there for the All-Star team for one offensive guy and one kind of like do everything guy for you. And coming into the final couple days of action, it looked like it was going to be Axel Sandin Pellikka who was going to take that spot. Well, Hudson, despite only kind of playing 18, 19 minutes, and he played more in the gold medal game, I was like, he's still kind of doing his thing, but he was so clutch. He came up big when they needed him in that shot, right? Like, you can't rely on defensemen to bury for you. You want them to be, play creators, facilitators more primarily. But he was coming up big when he needed to and finishing off plays. I liked how scrappy he was. I was on a different show there, and they're asking me, is he legit? I'm like, he's legit, and he's a rat too. Like, he gets under guys' skin, and he was like giving it to him, taking it, giving it back. And I really like that from an undersized defenseman, is that he's going to have to play that kind of role. He's going to have to be kind of tenacious and agitating, as well as having that offensive side to him, because he's not going to be able to stop guys defensively just being big and strong. That's not going to be his game. He's going to have to get inside position, get under guys, lift sticks, cross-check guys, slash them. And we were seeing all of that, right? And someone said he's got like the most punchable face they've ever seen. And I was like, that's going to work to his advantage. Got that punchable face. Few of those American kids got a punchable face, and I like it for them. I like it for their future. But no, I thought I think it was a really nice coming out party, and it's just another feather in the Washington Capitals pipeline cap there, right? Like they've got some players coming, and this event was like a really nice boon for them to be like, look, we have a pretty good team right now. Look at all these guys, how they're showing out against the best U20s in the world too. So it's happy for him, and hopefully not too many guys punch him in the face here too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Cole just really enjoys playing the heel too, as we saw with his I Can't Hear You celebration and his Superman
So good.
celebration in the gold medal game. And he's got swagger. I'll give him that. There's no question about it. But, you did mention, so Cole Hudson was obviously critical in those clutch moments. A guy who I think had his best as the tournament progressed and continually got better and more effective was Zeev Buium. He ends up assisting on the game-winning goal on one of the best possible stretch passes. A little bit of sauce and a little bit of accuracy. putting it in a place that only Teddy Stiga could get it, and almost missed it, but got it. It was there enough. It was an incredible tournament for Zeev Buium. He averaged 5 more minutes of ice time than any one of his teammates. Little under 5 minutes than Drew Fortescue. He ends up with 6 points, including that game-winning assist on that beautiful stretch pass. Played close to 30 minutes in some of the most important games. There was, I believe, against Czechia and against Canada, he was playing, half the period in the third period. And then against Finland, he obviously played significant minutes, being one of the primary guys they used in overtime. And he's now here's the thing about Zeev, Cam, is that he just wins all the time, and he plays a winning brand of hockey. I think in this tournament, he took his defensive game as seriously as we've ever seen it, which has now become a strength of his. And then he didn't score as many points, but here he is, and he's won an under 18 world championship, 2 world junior championships, an NCAA championship, and even going the championship games for conference title, even wins the NCHC. So it seems like if you are in a championship game, you want to have Zeev Buium on your roster. What were the things that you saw from him? And I mean, let's think about to the draft too, Cam. Let's go back to the draft. He was the 6th defenseman taken in his class. And I had him as the 2nd. I know there were other people that had him either somewhere in that 3 to 4 range. There were probably, obviously the teams had him in the 6 range. Minnesota Wild have what I think will end up looking like a tremendous steal, having gotten him outside of the top 10. Cam, what more can we say about Zeev Buium and where he's going as a player?
And if you're in a championship game, you want Zeev Buium. If I'm in like my beer league and we're fighting to stay in 5th place, I want Zeev Buium. Like I want that guy on the ice every possible chance we get. And like we projected him to be the top D man, and he didn't jack up 9-10 points, and that's why he wasn't. But on a whole, like you said, he got better as the tournament went along. We started to see a little bit of that shake and bake walking downhill from the point where he was breaking guys' ankles a little bit and opening up seams and creating those mismatches. But yeah, to log 28, 29 minutes a night, him and Tom Wielander were, they're horses for their team for time on ice, making just great stops. Just everything about him is just so calm and confident. He makes plays look effortless. He breaks pressure on retrievals. He makes those things like Minnesota. They're going to have a chance to just like have Buium and Brock Faber on the ice for like the entire game, 50 plus minutes a night if they don't want to put them as a partnership, right? They're just going to, it's going to be an incredible luxury for them to have these 2 guys that are probably both going to be legitimate number 1 level talent defenders quickly. To be able to roll those guys out there for your entire game, like how much fun is that going to be for their forwards too, to just know that they have those guys back there that can skate so well, that they can move the puck so well and clean up any messes that are made, right? I think he's just a tremendous player. And like you said, just a winner too, which is always great news for teams that are, teams like the Wild that are looking to come up and continue to push up and be a contender for a long time, is that players like Zeev Buium, Brock Faber, those type of guys are going to extend your window for a really long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zeev, I think when you have a winning attitude, a winning pedigree, and you do all the right things, you are making yourself so valuable. And the Wild are obviously in a good position. The other thing too is like the Wild have used some of their 1st round draft picks on defensemen that haven't necessarily panned out. And sometimes that can make you a little gun shy to go back to the well of the defenseman. And you're like, oh man, we've really, it hasn't worked out. It's going to work out with Zeev Buium. I think he'll be on their roster, come playoff time. So I think that's going to be something there. Another guy that I think will be on an NHL roster this spring is Ryan Leonard, and he was the MVP, Team USA's captain. He ends up finishing tied for second in the tournament with 10 points, 2 assists in the gold medal game. Broke his nose, was a pest, was booed mercilessly for most of the tournament. Gave us the money quote that it's cool to be hated, which I just loved, and I love the attitude that he brought. But this was another Ryan Leonard. We knew Cam. We knew this is how he is, and this is how he plays. And again, it's Ryan Leonard showing up big. I mean, having some of his best, best moments. He narrowly missed scoring the greatest game-winning goal in the
Oh,
history of the World Juniors with
oh
the moves
boy.
that he put on, splitting the D, and then Petteri Rimponen robbed him, and it was inches from going right through that little opening there. Ryan Leonard, I mean, I know you've been very high on him for quite some time. I mean, what more can we say there too? I mean, it seems like a lot of these guys, we just start running out of things. I mean, he's been a clutch player for most of his career, and he scores big goals and he makes big plays.
Yeah, and the superlatives start to run out for these type of guys, but you're absolutely right. He'll be in the NHL. He could be in the NHL right now if he wanted to.
Right.
He just like I was, we wanted, this was his team. He was the beating heart of it. He was going to be the emotional leader. He was going to be the physical leader, and you were looking for him to be the offensive leader too. And by the time we got to the end of the tournament, he got there too, right? There were some moments where I was like, he's maybe taking that agitator role a little too far, just like right in the goalie's kitchen all the time. It's like, you're not, I'd rather you be walking downhill and sniping it than just be living in the crease all the time, eating lumber and getting, but you do get in the goalie's head in that way, and you pay off long-term, hopefully. But another player, as the tournament wore on, I thought he got better. And always a money quote after the game too. Ryan Leonard is too. So, and we talk about Washington Capitals, right? They've got another one coming. He'll be in the lineup at the end of the season here, and he'll be pushing on a team that's going to be playing in the playoffs. He's a feisty guy who I don't expect is going to be like a 90, 100-point guy in the NHL, but someone that teams are going to absolutely hate to play when he's in his prime, and his teammates are going to just adore. Because he does all those dirty little hard area things that you need to succeed. Plus, he has the skill too, like you said, go and split the D and deke out a goalie. If it wasn't for Mr. Showtime there, like we were all up on our feet there, just like, oh my goodness, if he had buried that would have gone down in history, right? Like to win it like that would have been something special.
Yeah.
But
even
still,
just getting
then
through.
Teddy Stiga got his moment, so it worked out.
Yeah, which was a great story too. But yeah, I mean, if Leonard does that, I mean, his legacy in a USA Hockey jersey. I mean, he scored the overtime winner in his under 18 year as well, and the 05 birth year can now say we're a dynasty with their under 18 and 2 world junior gold medals. Last thing I want to talk about with the Team USA victory is been one of the hottest topics, I think, coming out of the tournament, and that really is, what does this mean for David Carl? 2 NCAA titles, 2 World Junior Championships, the first head coach to lead a team back-to-back. The first time USA has even played for a gold medal in back-to-back years. They had not played in consecutive finals until David Carl brought them there. He's led Denver to 3 Frozen Fours in his young career. He is 35 years old. And now we're talking about probably one of the hottest coaching prospects in the game. And I went as far, I wrote this in FloHockey. You can go read it on FloHockey.tv. We talk about generational prospects as players. How many coaches by the age of 35 have a resume as good as David Carl does at this point in time? So, I mean, Cam, we've talked a lot about that in general, but what do you think some of the things are? I'll share as well, but what do you think some of the things are that make David Carl a good coaching prospect and a winning coach? I mean, we've had the opportunity to talk to him plenty, and I think that there's a lot of signals there that there's something special going on with David Carl.
Yeah, so like with coaching, it's you can impact the game in a number of different ways. You can't get on the ice and do it for the players, right? So you need to ignite in those players the will to do what it takes to be victorious, right? And you need to maximize the situations for them. You need to know how to press their buttons. Like you said, like a Teddy Stiga, right? The kid was playing 8-9 minutes a night. And then he decides, we're going to throw him out here for an overtime shift. How many teams are doing that, right? Like how many teams would get into 3-on-3 overtime in a gold medal game and they'll be like, I'm going to roll out one of my fourth liners right now. No, they're going to shorten up their bench, right? It's 2 forwards and a D. You're not looking at your bottom 6 guys for the most part. So he knew how to press those buttons. He knew how to get guys involved and engaged. A player like Cole Hudson, who, was only seeing 17, 18 minutes a night, but he knew when to get him on the ice, how to utilize him, how to maximize those things. So for someone who's 35 years old, maybe he can relate a little bit easier to these under 20, these teenage kids, or, at Denver, these U22, U23 players, is that, he's only a decade or so older than them. So he has a little more familiarity with that age bracket and what you need to do to kind of to push them and not push them too far, not push them too hard, but motivate them in the right ways too. So I think that he did a tremendous job, and he always does do a tremendous job of how to use, like, we look at a guy like Cole Eiserman, right? 13th forward, playing on the power play. And I said it, like, Eiserman had like the sweetest gig at the WJC there. Like, he was sitting there on the bench as a 13th forward chirping. Then he'd fly out there on the power play, rip a goal, back to the bench, and now he can keep chirping too, right? Because he's out there and he's maximized. He is a shooter. We need him for this. We don't want him starting possession in the defensive end, because that's not how he's going to succeed and help our team succeed. We're going to use him in offensive zone draws. We're going to use him on the power play. We're going to put him in a shooter's position. He's going to shoot. He's going to score goals. Versus like a team like Canada, they had a player in Bradley Nadeau, a pure shooter. They had him on the goal line, right? On the power play, they had him down low. They're not using their players to the best of their ability. It's a little dig at Dave Cameron again here. So I really appreciate what David Carl did. I think he's a tremendous, tremendous coach. I think he has a blank check right now. And I think he has said that he is comfortable staying in the NCAA. He has a young family. He's not interested in moving. And, he's in a position right now where he could probably stay for decades at Denver, right? Like, he could do whatever he wanted and just stay there forever and not have to worry about job security. Where if you go to the NHL, you're a first-year coach, you're probably going to a bad team. What happens if you don't get him turned around in 2-3 years? Now you're out of work. Now you're not as like in demand as you once were. Now all of a sudden you're not considered just a pure winner. So there is a lot of risk to move there. But at the same time, if I was him and if I was his wife, probably, let's say that, if I was his wife and I'm looking at this situation being like, you could probably go sign like a 6-year deal for like $4 or $5 million per right now, because he is so hot off those natties, off these World Junior Golds. Like, he literally could write his own check. And like that job security alone, you sign yourself a 5 or 6 year deal, like as a first time NHL coach. Like, I honestly believe that there'd be some teams out there that would be like, what do you want? We'll give you whatever you want right now. And now if you wait a couple more years, like, he's not going to be back, just reported that he won't come back for the three-peat in the 2026 WJC, right? And, maybe Denver goes through a little lull and he's not competing in the Frozen Four. He's going to lose that sizzle, right? That really, that momentum. So if it was me and I was advising, and that would be the wife's job, and it certainly is in my household here, I'd be like, now's the time. All right, end of the year, let's take a cut. Let's see how it goes, because you know what? College is always going to be sitting there waiting for him too. Things didn't break right. He can come back and he can have his pick probably of all the top schools and go and settle back into. So I think that this would be a really great time for him. I have no idea if he actually will. No insight on that whatsoever, but I think it would be a opportune time to get himself just paid.
Yeah, I paid a lot of money. And on top of that, I think you're exactly right. The thing that he has right now between, I think his value is never higher unless he starts winning Stanley Cups right away. And then you also have this situation where, yes, Denver's awesome. It's a great situation. He can be picky, and he might be able to wait for, those teams that are on that next phase of their rebuild, or their next, they're not at the beginning of a rebuild where some of these, teams are. You think about a guy like Ryan Warsofsky, and he's in San Jose at a time where they're just starting the swing in the more positive direction with the addition of Celebrini. But, you look at what happened to Luke Richardson in Chicago, and you look at every single Sabres coach in the history of time, all these different things, and you see that volatility. And I think that that's what David sees as well. I think that it's going to take, obviously a big money, like you mentioned. It's going to take a situation where he's put into success. But here's why I think David Carl is going to be a good coach in the NHL. And it's something that you mentioned, Cam, about the ability to relate with players. I think the way that he speaks with players and the way that he interacts with players, there is still that boss kind of employee situation. But I've always thought and noticed that there's more of a collaboration. There's more of a, this is what I need from you. Can you do it kind of thing? And I think that helps. He is demanding of his players, but I think he relates to them and he also gets the most out of them. The anecdote you shared about Cole Eiserman is a great one, because Cole Eiserman has never in his life been anything less than a top 6 forward, getting regular ice time, 5-on-5 power play, doesn't matter. And here he is, and he says, you're only going to get single digit minutes here, pal. And Cole Eiserman at least outwardly, was fine with it. Like, that is, first of all, that's maturation on Cole
Buying
Eisenman's
in,
part. Second of
right?
all,
Buying in.
it's you bought in. He gets buy-in, and that is the thing. You talk to Zeev, he says everybody buys into what he's doing. And I think it's because there are obviously coaches that can only coach college or junior hockey because they have that power dynamic that works better with younger players. That is not how David Carl operates. He operates more on the level. And so with that, I think that is why he would succeed at the NHL level, why he would be able to relate to the players, but also to work with the players and not think that he has all of the answers. He also empowers his assistant coaches to do their job. He lets the people that are around him do their jobs. And I think that matters. And so to me,
Yeah.
it's a great situation. He is in the ultimate position of power right now because, as you mentioned, he's as hot as a pistol right now in terms of what everybody expects from him. And then on top of that, he is going to potentially have this chance to make a life-changing amount of money, because as much as Denver is going to pay him, they cannot compete with the NHL. There's just not a Division I job in the country that is going to pay $4 to $5 million, and that's just the way it's going to be. So I think I do think we're going to talk about it again a little bit later in the show in Beyond Belief about David Carl, but I mean, the future is so bright for him. I really do think he is one of the best young coaches in the game today. And not at all surprised that he will not be going for the three-peat. I mean, what more do you have to prove at that point? The tournament will be in Minnesota, so maybe there's the draw of a home tournament, but I think we'll probably see a Minnesota-based coach behind the bench for that one. So anyway, before we move on from the World Juniors and put it completely in our rear view, I did want to go to a couple of other takeaways from the tournament, and I wanted to throw it back to you, Cam, because we did talk in our last episode about all of the things that we thought went wrong with Canada in the tournament. Turns out a couple days later, they get bounced by Czechia in the quarterfinals for the second straight year. That is the first time it has ever happened. So now it's like a national travesty. Now, people will have moved on to a certain extent, because when the World Juniors ends, there's that hyper intense time. And then it's like, yeah, remember that thing that happened? And you really only remember who won and maybe not who didn't, and all those other things. But Hockey Canada, certainly this is sticking in their craw. I think, one of the things we talked about, one of the things that, you were at the press conferences, you heard the different things that they were saying. I really do think that there is a refinement necessary in their entire process at this point, because we've now seen back-to-back years where they just built a team that didn't fit. And then they put it in the hands of a coach who didn't put them in any other position to make it work. So just general thoughts from you, like, now that we've got a little distance and there's less emotion involved, where are the areas that we think Canada can refine this process and get themselves back at the top of the podium?
It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be straightforward for them. Scott Salmon, who runs the entire thing, and he was the one who said, like, who asked who's to blame? It's to me. It's he's like, it's I'm to blame. Like, I pick the coaches, I pick the scouts, I pick the GM. Like, I pick the people who make the decisions. Great, we can blame you, Scott, if you really want to, but we actually we're probably pointing fingers at the guys who actually did the scouting and did the managing and did the coaching. Is that so? The Peter Anholt, the GM, his 2-year contract, it's up. He won't be back. Al Murray, like a legend in the scouting community, works for the Lightning. He's still got 1 year left. He, by all assumptions, will be back. Scott Salmon will be back. They need to look at how they identify players. They need to look at how they create a team, right? Like I asked them this, I'm like, was this like an attempt to go like back to the old like Smash Mouth Canada hockey, where it's like, if you're not going to run them up, you're going to fill them in, right? You're going to intimidate you're going to run them through the end boards. Was that this attempt? Because it didn't work, right? They brought a bunch of guys who could play defense and kill penalties, but it wasn't like they were overly physical. And then they left all this skill behind, so they weren't all that skillful either. But at the very end of the day, and I'll stand by it, there was enough skill on that team to win a gold medal. They just weren't a team. Something was like inherently off about them right from drop. Like, they were tight. They didn't have chemistry. They didn't look comfortable on the ice together. They didn't practice, so they didn't have any opportunity to get really comfortable on the ice. They were just put in all these situations to fail. And that is going to come down to the decision makers, right? Like at no point were those kids not trying to win, right? They were all trying to win, and some of them were trying too hard to win and playing too individualistically. And guess what? That's back on the coaching staff to be like, no, play the system, work the give and goes, get to the inside. We have a process, stick with the process. Everybody buy in. Nobody bought in. Nobody bought in, to be completely honest with you. And so that's going to come at the top. I absolutely know that they are, Hockey Canada is feeling this, right? The last time this happened was 40 plus years ago, and they had the summit, right? We got a program of excellence came out of it. Is that they were like, we can't be losing to West Germany and finishing 7th. Well, the world has caught up. You can no longer just be Canada and be like, we're Canada. We're going to medal no matter what. We're going to be in a gold medal game basically every year because we're Canada. Not the case anymore. Basically, the field is near even, I would say at this point, with 3-4 teams every year being like, we can gold. And if you're one of them, that means that you might end up 4th. You might end up 5th. If you get a little unlucky in round robin player in the quarterfinals, then Canada is right in that mix. Now, at the same time, they could bring a lineup next year that could be dominant. Like they have the potential to be like a really, really strong team next year if they bring the right people and if they put them in the right positions to succeed. So I'll be very, very interested to see who they name as coach next year, because I think that there's a real issue. There is no David Carl in Canada, right? There is no young, really talented coach that's winning things in Canada. And why is that, right? Like, is that because you can coach in Ontario and make 6 figures, coach in AAA Pee Wee? You can go coach in the OJ and be a successful OJHL coach and be like, I'm probably not going to get fired. I don't have to travel as much. I can be around my young family and I can still make 250, 300K, right? What's the motivation to move up and try to be the coach of the Ottawa 67s and have a 500 season and then get canned, right? What's the motivation to move up into the pro ranks when you can make all this money? They need to find a way to elevate, to create, identify and elevate young coaches that can do things that David Carl is doing. And that is relating to players, getting guys to buy in, finding success, moving up the ranks. And that is like a systemic problem that is not going to be solved overnight and not going to be solved simply by Scott Salmon being like, you know what, I think I'll pick this guy. So maybe it's Gardner McDougall next year, right? Who's in his 60s, but he knows how to push buttons. He won gold at U18s last year. He's a hell of a guy. I don't know what all the right answers are, but Canada needs to find a way to do better. And I think that a good starting point is to simply bring some of the most talented players in the age bracket in the nation and being like, you know what? You're a 2.5 point a game guy in the WHL. Today, you're our 13th forward. And when you get out there in an offensive zone draw or you get out on the power play, you make an impact because you might not get another shift if you don't. And guys will be like, I want to win. I want to get another chance. I'll go out there. I'll block a shot. I'll go make sure I hit that seam pass because if I don't, I might not see the ice for the rest of the game. And I think I'd rather that than be like, you know what? You're a 4th liner. You're a 3rd liner in the CHL. You're going to come and you're going to play a 3rd line role here. And if someone gets injured, I guess you're going to play top 6, even if you don't have the skill to do it. You bring talent. And
yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think that, there's a lot there. And really, again, I think it comes back to what we said last week too, is you have to take some of you have to have some humble pie really at this point, and recognize that the process didn't work. The philosophies may need to change and you may need new voices in certain areas to have success. A couple of other things that are less Canada related, but Czechia they beat Canada 2 years in a row. They won't have Michael Hrabal after this year. And he's the goalie that beat them twice, but they're going to have a good number of players. And it just feels like this is the continuation of a Czech kind of, they're on the come up basically. And we've seen, higher end draft prospects. We've seen some guys play really well. I mean, Edward Shala coming back and being awesome in this tournament, I think is a really, really great story for him. And I think it's a testament to the development that he's shown in the AHL this year. But I think the Czechs are going to be in the medal mix again next year. They've got some real talented players that they're going to be able to pull from, even though they're going to be missing some of their core guys. But I think that's one of it. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is the world is getting better. And you said it. The world is getting better. Latvia beats Canada for the first time. Latvia wins 2 games at the World Juniors for the first time. Czechia bounces Canada 2 years in a row. Finland, with probably not the most talented roster, still ends up getting to the gold medal game and has a silver medal out of the deal. And, I think that and then we'll also talk about Sweden in a second too, and what's going on there. But the fact of the matter is, players across the board are getting better, and the top end for teams is getting better. The thing that I think is most fascinating, you look at a team like Latvia, they had 7 guys wearing cages on their roster. 7.
Yeah.
They had young players this was a team that was built for the future, and they still competed. They had Lennart Feldbergs, who was unbelievable, and Eric Smateko, who scored so many big goals for them. But Cam, like, it just feels like, and even without Russia in the tournament, the tournament is hurt by that, in terms of the number of competitive games that are played. But this was still a very competitive and unpredictable World Junior. I mean, I feel like we're in a golden era for junior hockey across the world. Are we not?
It felt like this was the most competitive tournament I've watched in years and years because the Slovak was pushing teams. Like, it was like Latvia, right? Germany was a hard out. Czechia, like you said, that's medals in 3 straight: silver, bronze, bronze. 2 silvers at back-to-back Halinkas. Right. So that U18 group is pushing up now, right? They were missing a guy like Dominik Badinka and Radim Murtka, these big power defenders who can move the puck and stuff too. Like, they're going to have pieces that are going to be there next year. Adam Banash is going to be there. Adam Novotny's role is going to improve. They're going to have these players. So while Finland got a silver this year, they're kind of on the downswing with the talent that's coming up to push into the U20 level. So I kind of see the Czechs like replacing Finland as kind of that 4th power internationally for the foreseeable future until we do get Russia back. And you're absolutely right. We do miss Russia in this. Like, the tournament is less because of it. And usually we have a good team bounced in the quarters because of that. And we did again this year just because Canada, but, and the year before. But it will be nice when we get them back and we can truly have kind of a best on best at the U20 level. But no, it's I've said it, the world has caught up. Everybody, they develop them differently in Europe than they do in North America, but it's skill, and they don't have the depth, but they have that buy-in, right? Like Czechia, a bunch of those kids play in the CHL. We see them. They're known commodities, and they're not as good as the players that were on Team Canada. But when you put them together and you get them to buy into a system, they were better on the whole, right? They didn't need to be individualistic, right? They had Edward Chalet if they needed someone to break the game open or take 5 shots in the shootout, but they play as a unit. And that's where their strength lies, right? They don't have a bunch of guys that are trying to do it all themselves. And so we see that out of these European teams, just like Finland, right? They made the most. They maximized the talent that they had on their roster by being a cohesive unit. And that is so key for these teams to continue to push into that medal hunt. And it's awesome for hockey. And it's great. It's great at the U18, the U20 level. And it's going to be great when we see international hockey in the pro level too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love international hockey, and I really enjoy going to watch the practices that Finland and Sweden run, and everybody does things a little differently. I think we also look at the development model across other countries, and obviously there's the club model where you're in your local club and you move up and do all these different things. And there's a lot of things that can be learned from Sweden and Finland, and a lot of USA Hockey's own learnings have come from foreign countries, because they say the population isn't close in those countries. We're talking like Sweden has the population of some states, in the United States, and the hockey playing population is much smaller, yet they still get all these great players. Now, unfortunately, we do have to talk about Sweden too, and we're going to talk about these last little topics here quickly, but Sweden fails to medal in this tournament. They have never, I felt like they had their best shot at a gold medal since 2012 in this tournament. They were in the gold medal game last year. They lose in overtime to Finland. What on earth can Sweden do to get over the hump? They always find a way to lose the big game. I don't get it. They have talent. I thought they had the best decor in the tournament this year. I thought they had a lot of the tools. Their goaltending wasn't great, but this is a team that absolutely had a chance. They go undefeated in the prelims, and they are skunked in the medal round. I mean, it is unbelievable to me. Cam, do we have any explanation? What is it?
Well, we talked about it before the tournament, is that they don't get pushed early enough, and that might be probably won't be an issue next year. But is that,
right.
They had they had a bit of a cakewalk again through the round robin, as we expected, right? They faced Czechia in the final prelim game there, and they beat them, and that was their first test, but it wasn't an overly close game. And then, yeah, like they just, a couple of things went wrong for them, right? Their goaltending didn't hold up, and they didn't have that guy who they could really rely on, right? Like Edward Shalley was for Czechia, like a kid like, Ryan Leonard or Cole Hudson or whoever on the America. They had several guys that could do it for them. They didn't have that one guy that they could be like, the year before they had Jonathan Lekiramaki, who was scoring, whatever, he had 8 or 9 goals, right? He could finish that one-shot goal scoring. They lacked that. Udo Stenberg just wasn't that player. Felix Ungersorum is more of a playmaker, right? They didn't have that real dynamic offensive guy to ramp it up when they needed it the most. And so it's tough, man. Imagine being that team and won like, 500 straight round robin games over that decade stretch. And, they had one gold in 40 plus years, right? Like it is tough sledding to be a Swede hockey fan at this tournament, because they are every year. You're like, this team's good enough to win gold. And every year they somehow find a way to let them down too. So I don't think it's like I don't think you can point at one thing and be like, that's why. I think it was a collection of things this year, and it probably is most years. I don't really have a solution for you either. Like maybe it's psychosomatic. Maybe it's in their heads, right? That they know that they're, we can't win gold. We're not going to win gold. I'm not sure. Maybe they got the sports psychologist to travel around with them to Minnesota next year.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad investment. I mean, really at this point, it's just, it's hard. And last year they had another great chance against USA on home ice with just a tremendous crowd, and just couldn't do it. And it's crazy to me how it keeps happening. Before we move on from that, just, Minnesota next year will have the World Juniors. It'll be in St. Paul and Minneapolis at the XL Energy Center and 3M Arena at Mariucci, on the campus of the University of Minnesota. Really excited about that tournament. And the best part about it, USA, Canada, Sweden, all on the same side of the bracket. You don't need to move things around if you don't want to in Minnesota. You can get all those clutch games that will help you sell tickets and get people excited about the tournament. I can't wait to be there, Cam. I know you can't wait to be there. We will stop at Mickey's Diner. We will do all of the Mighty Ducks things that we can. But coming up December 26th through January 5th of next year, you will have the World Junior Championship in Minnesota. All right. Now we're going to talk a little NHL draft. And I want to buzz through this because I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on it because these are top guys. We've talked about them a lot. But I do want to touch on James Hagens. I think helped himself at this tournament. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that. I think that he scored 9 points, 5 goals in the tournament for him. He scored in the gold medal game. I think that he showed that cerebral kind of calm puck moving of game, playmaking game. I thought that was solid for him. I mean, any lingering thoughts from James Hagens in terms of his performance in this tournament and how it helps his draft stock?
Good, not great. How about that? He was good. He
Yes, I
wasn't like
agree with that.
explosive and dominant, right? He didn't be like, I am the number one pick. Everybody look at me. But good, right? 9 points, right? That's like the 5th most ever for a draft year American. We're talking like he's, just a couple points behind guys like Matthews and Kachuk and these type of players, and same amount of points as like Phil Kessel. And so like he did very, very well. But he also was gift wrapped the best spot in the lineup, right? Next to Pro, next to Leonard on the top power play. Like he had all the tools at his disposal to have, like if he ended up out of there with 3 or 4 points, I would have been like, oh boy. So he did what he needed to do, but it wasn't, I don't think, as demonstrative an output that you'd be like, now he's back as the consensus or the front runner for first overall. I think he was good though. And he's a good player and he's a playmaker. It's all going to come down to, is your team looking for a 5'10" playmaking center who isn't like super dynamic with his feet? That's going to be the answer that a team has to answer. The question that a team has to answer, right? Is that, do you want that at 1 or is that your pick at 4? Because I think that's kind of the range for him at this point.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that'll stand out and that scouts will tell you is that 1 point in the toughest games of the tournament, and that was the goal that he scored in the gold medal game. That's a big point, though. I mean, that was a big moment, and it was also a hard play. Matthew Schaefer, we only saw for 1 game and 2 minutes before he was injured. He is still far and away the number 1 defenseman in this draft class. Very good chance of being number 1, but now he's out for an extended period of time. I think we're both in agreement. I think we talked about this a little bit because he had been injured before our previous podcast, he's still very much in the conversation for number one. And I think, if anything, Canada's collapse almost shows how much more valuable Matthew Schaefer really was to that team, because they did not come close to replacing him, did they?
No, and I was going to say that too, is that, he was really good in those 3.1 periods that he got to play. Clearly the most talented Canadian defenseman, and was going to have a big
Yep.
tournament. Like, if he had played, he could have been that guy that was like, there's a stamp, I'm the number one guy, right? He was trending in that direction. But then for the team to fall off a cliff like they did without him, not being able to move the puck, not being able to have their defense activate the way they could, or should have been able to, that you're absolutely right. It's almost like the injury was like just more reflective of how important he was, and what a talent he is. To have a kid who just turned 17 a couple months ago be that important to a Canadian U20 squad, yes, that comes in a little bit with the player selection and who they brought, that they had no one to replace him with, but also it speaks to just how talented this kid is. And another thing, just a peach of a human too, right? So like we talked about that last week too. So I think personally that he did enough in those like little glimpses that we saw to elevate himself even higher. Now the big question will be, is that like how pumped is a team going to be to take a kid first overall who's going to have like 20 games on his season and is draft eligible? We don't see that too often. But it does mean we're probably likely to see him at the U18s, which I don't think would have happened again if he didn't get injured. And we'll probably get to see him at the World Juniors next year, because not too many teams are going to be, a young kid like him with a late September birthday, and having so few games in his draft eligible season to then throw to the Wolves in the NHL next year. Even if he's the number one pick, I definitely expect him to be back in junior and then back for Team Canada next year, being their number one defenseman.
Yeah, I think that's a lock right there. Meanwhile, Porter Martone, healthy scratch in a few games for Canada. Did have one, important goal for them, but now he's part of this unfortunately disappointing team, and in a minor role essentially. Anything to should we read too much into it, or do you think that this helped or hurt? I don't think it helped, but did it hurt him at all?
No, I don't think so. Lauren Kelly, she said it great. She's like, what's Porter Martone going to do for 2 weeks in the bottom six for Team Canada other than hurt his draft stock? I don't even think it did that. I think everybody knew that like he didn't get the opportunities that he probably should have. Like, why not slide him on that second line right wing? Why not? Why not just get a look, right? He played with McKenna. He ripped it up last year in Finland at the U18s. Why not give him a little taste up in the top six, right? He scored that big goal in that quarterfinal game because they slid him out there on the power play with Gavin McKenna, right?
Yeah.
Like they put some talent together, and lo and behold, like the kid knows how to play. He's offensive, right? He's not a checker. So I don't think it hurt him. I don't think it helped him. I think it was just in one executive said the same thing. He's like, we're assessing him on club play, right? They've seen what he can do. He's, I think he's maybe the most productive player ever at the U18s for Canada over the 2-year stretch. So he has popped off internationally before at the Holinka the year before last. But it's going to be his play with Brampton down the stretch here too, that's going to kind of indicate what another player. Do you like him all the way up at 1 or 2, or is he the guy that's going to be 4? The uniqueness of being a big-bodied winger kind of mixes it up for some teams here too. But it's a big 4 at the top right now, and he didn't move the needle either way, I don't think, with this performance.
I think you're probably right on that one. I think, we've seen him in enough other settings where that's not going to play into it too much. One guy who I did really like over the course of the tournament, and liked him as the tournament progressed, was Victor Eklund from Sweden. And I thought that there was a lot there but again, Sweden disappoints, but in the most critical games, in the quarterfinal in the semifinal against Finland, he ends up playing 18-25 of that game. It did go into overtime, but that's a pretty solid usage for him. And then was used pretty heavily in the bronze medal game as well. Played almost 22 minutes in a game that also went to overtime and then eventually a shootout. Any takeaways from Victor Eklund's game? He did finish the tournament with 6 points total in 7 games for Sweden. Any pluses or minuses that you saw from him in this event?
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. He's tenacious, right? Tenacious.
Yes.
I love that, especially from a smaller winger. I said it is that you don't need to be 6'3", 220 to win a puck battle. You need to want it more and understand leverage and inside position and how to get under bodies and lift sticks. And he's a bit of a thief in the night on the back check. He takes great routes on the forecheck. He's physical. I'm a big fan of this player, and it also has loads of skill, like enough skill that you can be like, this is a top six forward in the NHL one day. I thought he was opportunistic. I thought he played his role really well. He was locked on that second line. He played some top power play minutes in the bumper. He had good opportunities. He had good looks. He probably could have scored a couple more goals or had a few more points there too. But he played his role very, very effectively. And to do that at his age, at this level, I think is a real boost to him. For some teams, probably we're looking at him as maybe like a mid first rounder. Is that maybe they come away from this being like, you know what, this guy's probably worth our attention here at 8, 9, 10, something like that. I don't think he's going to push into that 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 range just because he is a 5'10", 165-pound winger, where teams just
Right.
can't help themselves that they're gonna target centers and D. But I think he helped his stock with this performance.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think that he really just, there are things that he does that pop, and I think that really helps, and we saw some of that here. All right, well, there were a couple other draft eligibles, but I want to get into something with some drafted prospects because it was a big news week right coming out of the World Juniors, and it always is. But boy, were there some massive, massive trades, particularly in the WHL, and you were all over it. And so, Cam, let's take a quick look at the CHL trade deadline. Who was on the move? What were some of the biggest moves that you saw, and which ones do you maybe you like the best that came out of this week of just massive movement where big stars were going to new teams?
Yeah, putting on my little insider hat that I've been trying to grow into, was breaking some of these CHL trades. Andrew Cristal going to Spokane, like him and Berkeley Catton.
Yeah,
That's a lot of talent. That's a lot
massive.
of skill, right? I'm not sure if they're planning on sliding those two together. They'll probably give them a look together at 5-on-5 and be like, Cristal, you're the disher. Catton, now you got to be a finisher. Where Catton likes to kind of do both. But on the power play, they're definitely going to play together. And like the Spokane Chiefs are not to be trifled with, right? That they're going to be a really hard out in the playoffs this year. The Central in the West, right? The Calgary Hitmen are leaving no stone unturned. And right, I reported a couple days ago that Jakob Stansel is also going to be traded there too to fill out their final Euro spot on their team after already getting Sorminio, Tanner Howe. Like they are jacked up. And then of course, Lethbridge, they added Tanner Molendyke. It's Caden Price, I should say. Tanner Molendyke went to Medicine Hat. So, there's all these World Junior players that are moving hands, and it's almost like the World Juniors is like an audition before the CHL trade deadline, right? Joey Willis moved out of Saginaw. Lots of big name players moving, but the West, I think that Central Division is at like one of Medhat, Calgary, and Lethbridge isn't getting out of the second round. And that's, for a team that like, all these teams are mortgaging futures right now because they're like, we could win a Memorial Cup, and there's going to be a couple of heartbroken teams. I think the Rockets are really interesting because they were awarded the Mem Cup next year, right? And so then they're like, ooh boy, like we're not good enough to compete for a Memorial Cup. So they deal Cristal. They deal Caden Price. They're going to deal Stansel. And they're bringing in, they're not looking purely for picks, right? They're looking for 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, get these guys back that they can now try to surround TJ Ginla with, as and then take those picks that did come along with them and parlay those into 19-year-olds next year to have themselves a chance to host and actually compete as well, right? It's always embarrassing when the host team like gets bounced in like the semis of their league play, doesn't play for a month, and then just gets waltzed in the Memorial Cup. So they have a lot of work to do on a quick turnaround. So they've been super active, and I think it's been really beneficial. I think they've done pretty well on some of their returns. But I think this year in particular has been a really fun year, and we're still waiting for like Jet Luchenko. The deadline in the O is tomorrow. I've got some feelers out there to see. We've heard a couple of teams have been linked to him, but nothing solid just yet. So he's kind of that last big fish remaining in the CHL that hasn't moved yet, and so I'll be really interested to see where he goes in the next few hours, probably.
Yeah. So if you want to see big transactions, don't look at the NHL. Look at the CHL, and by the way, how these packages are always hilarious. Like here's 7
Yeah.
draft picks. Here's our entire future mortgaged for this one player, and I kind of love it. It seems like fantasy sports at times when we when we see it, and it's like all the trades that you can make on NHL 25 or whatever else. But it is fascinating, and these names are big. And you think about a guy like an Andrew Cristal and what he can do in Spokane with a Berkeley Cat, and I mean, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see how that all works out. Do they have enough pucks to go around in Spokane? We will find out. So obviously, always exciting to see player movement at any level. But at the junior level, boy, do those trades really make a splash. I mean, you think about some of the moves that have been made over the years, and lots of guys that were moved even before the World Juniors, Jaeger and Tanner Howe, and like all these different things that kind of happened. So plenty to get excited about in the CHL with the trade deadline. And then also we've seen, big player additions and moves in the USHL as well. We talked about it last week. Ivan Rabkin going to Muskegon, which is he had 3 goals, I think, in his first weekend, and has also got suspended for slew footing. So I mean, hey, what a way to introduce yourself to the league. But lots of big names coming and going in junior hockey. But we're gonna move on, and I want to talk about this. Obviously, with FloHockey being the home of the AHL, it has been a lot of fun this year to watch this league. But what we're going to talk about today is the All-Star Classic, which will be coming up in early February, played in Palm Desert, California. And obviously, it's away from the wildfires, but our thoughts go out to everybody in California. My goodness, it's been horrifying to watch, and our thoughts are with all of you. I know a lot of teams out there, certainly with players and their families, could potentially be affected by these. So we definitely, give our best to everybody out there, and hopefully strength to all those firefighters working out there as well. But in a few weeks, we will go to the AHL All-Star Classic. One of the most fun events on the calendar. If you've never watched it, it's one of the most fan-friendly events there is. I mean, they take the glass out. There are players interacting with fans during the course of the game. I mean, there's so many cool things that the AHL does with this event. And at FloHockey, we're really proud to be the presenting sponsor for the roster announcements, which came out on Wednesday. And so we're going to go through those rosters right now, because there's a lot of big name prospects that are on these lists, and Cam and we'll talk a little bit about it. But we're going to start with the Pacific, and the Pacific is the host team. Cale Fleury is the only guy that it made the team from Coachella Valley, which has been one of the great stories. You see him right there on your screen. We thank the AHL for these images, but a couple of names to point out. Yaroslav Askarov, who's played a bit in the NHL this year, has been outstanding. There's a lot to like about Josh Doan and the way that he's returned to the AHL and rediscovering his game. I think he'll be back with Utah in no time. Devin Cooley replacing Dustin Wolf as the goalie with the Calgary Wranglers, and still putting up major numbers, a .937 save percentage for Devin Cooley. But you also look Elias Pettersson, and no, it's not that Elias Pettersson. It's the other one, the defenseman Elias Pettersson for the Abbotsford Canucks. And Cam, you're a Vancouver guy. It's got to be confusing enough to have two of these guys, the Elias Petterssons. Obviously, we know the one that everybody knows, but this one, I mean, he's taken a big step here, and I think that the Canucks should be really excited about version 2.0 here.
Yeah, they call him DPD because he's on the blue line, and so he's DPD. Yeah, so he's Elias Pettersson, and then the Canuck forward right now is Elias Pettersson. So that's one way to try. So there we go. Yeah, Elias and Elias. Yeah. So Elias Pettersson, DPD. PD 2.0, PD squared, whatever you want to call him. He's a horse, right? Kid's a first-year pro here over in North America. Just a sturdy 6'2", 200+ pound defenseman who can make some plays, but he's just like punishing. He's just smart defensively, and he hammers guys. I loved it last year in Gothenburg at the World Juniors. Everybody's got their own little warm-up routine. His is skating down the line and hitting every single player on his roster into the boards, right? That's how he warms up, because that's the game he's playing out there. I love that. You bang, the little gauntlet down the wall. No, he's a player for the Canucks. And I know that, when I'm on Vancouver radio or whatever, they're asking like, is he a solution right now? It's like, don't hang your hat on a second rounder, a third rounder, whatever, second rounder, a 20-year-old rookie, in North America. Let's not try to put expectations too high on him, but I do think that this is a player for them long-term. And I've said it for a couple of years now that I think he has kind of second pair upside maybe not like Kevin Bieksa type of points where he's going to put up 35, 40 points, but he's going to be that kind of swashbuckler with his physicality and with his ability to, he can make some plays too and jump up and pinch a little bit here and there, but it's just going to be a sturdy presence and a really nice feather in the cap for him to get the AHL All-Star nod.
Yeah, I think the great thing about the AHL All-Star game is that it is a mix of these promising prospects and some of these veterans that have made a
Mm-hmm.
significant impact in the game and in the league. And for Pedersen, it's an opportunity, because of it being a defenseman, he gets in there and now he has this opportunity to be along these guys. We're not going to use the All-Star Classic as an evaluation in terms of what they look like as prospects. It's a totally different dynamic, and it's still an All-Star event. But again, it's the recognition that I think
Yeah.
matters, and I'm really excited for him. And I've watched Abbotsford a few times this year, and he always stands out to me. We're going to move on to the Central now, and the Central is kind of fun because every single guy on the Central roster is a first-time All-Star in the AHL. They are mostly prospects here. You look at first rounders: Leon Bichelle, Sebastian Cossa. Scott Morrow's an early second round pick. Frank Nazar is a high pick. Liam Ogren's a high pick. Ryan Suzuki's a former first rounder. Austin Watson, a former first rounder years ago. But to see the number of prospects, and obviously Sebastian Cossa, if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, you got to be really excited about what he's done in Grand Rapids. The Red Wings have put him on a slow progression timeline, which I think is so important for goalies. You got to be patient. Don't buy into what their save percentage looks like as a rookie, as a second year. You got to kind of wait until they're getting closer to that NHL age. His save percentage has gone up. It's closer to a 918 this year. He's been really good. He's got size. He's got speed. And now he's got that head start on Trey Augustine, who just won another gold medal with Team USA. So they're going there. But, another guy I'm really excited, and we'll see if he's available. He's been with the Chicago Blackhawks for the last little bit, and that's Frank Nazar. And I know, Cam, you were certainly high on him in his draft year. I was as well. But, this is a guy that has really kind of breathed some life into a Chicago lineup just by continuing to improve. He hasn't necessarily produced a ton, but I mean, what he's done in Rockford this year, and then also just what he's been as a prospect. I mean, I think that this is a guy that Chicago fans should really be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Highly, highly skilled kid, right? Little undersized, but super dynamic. It's a tough spot because Bedard is a similar player, but obviously better. And to have that
Right.
as running as your 1-2 centers long term is going to be a little dicey for Chicago. I think they'd like some more meat, a little bit more size, and so maybe he ends up on the wing. But clicking over a point a game in the AHL this year. Like he's one of these guys that we kind of had a lost season for him after he was drafted, and now he's just like come back slowly, and now he's in the NHL and he's handling minutes. And I hope he does get sent back down just to infuse more talent into that All-Star game too for them and let him have some fun. And he earned that spot, but I'm sure he'll happily take the NHL paycheck otherwise if they decide not to send him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that the free trip to Palm Desert probably doesn't hurt, but at the same time, it's you're in the NHL, and Connor Bedard actually shared some nice words about Nazar and saying that, hey, he's getting better. The thing is, every next game is his best game yet. So that's
Hmm.
and that's I think you think about Frankie's been through it. He's gone through some injury issues early in his career, but he was part of USA last year at the gold medal, won the gold medal there, and now he's really on the rise. So really excited to see that. All right, we're going to move on to the North Division, and there's some real big names here, names that are familiar to NHL fans, and Devin Levi is certainly one of those guys. He's been up and down with Buffalo. It hasn't quite worked at the NHL level, but when he comes down to Rochester, he is lights out. They call him the Beast. He has been that for them. Isak Rosen is coming back for another All-Star game. It'll be his second run coming from Rochester. Logan Mailloux, another repeat All-Star. Joshua Waugh, who's having a big year in Laval, is going to be there. And then you get a trio of Cleveland Monsters: Luka Del Bel Beluz, Trey Fix-Wolansky, and Denton Mateychuk as well. And then you got some more veteran guys, and then Seamus Casey, of course, from Utica, who started the season in the NHL, had some real success with New Jersey while Luke Hughes was out injured. He's back in Utica. He's actually been a little bit banged up. Hopefully, he'll be good to go. But Cam, I want to talk about Denton Mateychuk because of the rookie defensemen in the league this year, I don't know that anyone has been as impressive. And you've been following his career for some time. Columbus moved on from David Juracek, yet they have Denton Mateychuk, who I'm guessing they're quite a bit higher on, and there's a lot of belief in what he's going to be at the next level.
He's so good. He is so talented. I am a huge Denton Mateychuk fan. Like I was so pumped when Columbus took him where they did because there was like I think I had him like top 6 or something on my rankings, and most people had him kind of in the middle of the first round or even pushing it to 20. And so like those computer boys, they know what they're doing there. Josh Weisbrook and those fellas in Columbus too. So former Panthers scouts and analysts that have moved on to Columbus, and they know how to pick them. So I'm a big fan of his. Like the way he's producing as a rookie pro in the AHL, like he is on pace to have like one of the top 10 best 20-year-old seasons by a defenseman in AHL history. Like he's outproducing what Brant Clark did in his like amazing 20-year-old season when he was in the AHL a couple of years ago, right? Like he's that good. And it's not just offensive, like defensively too, right? He is, I said it last year, he was the best defenseman in the CHL. And he didn't win CHL top defenseman, but for my money, he was that good. And that's the type of player that's coming up. And now he's, we're seeing he's getting his look in the NHL there. He got to play against his cousin, Owen Pickering, both just great kids, great guys, big fan of both of them. Getting to play against each other in the NHL, I thought was really cool. So, and he grabbed his first point there. And I was texting with him and just giving him some love there. And he's a good guy and a really talented player. So another one that hopefully he gets sent down just so he can be there. But again, if he doesn't, I'm sure he's happy to just play in CBJ and try to establish himself as an NHL regular because he has proven it's only taken 25 games or whatever he's played in the AHL. He's proven that he is, head and shoulders at that level, even as a 20-year-old.
Yeah, really impressive stuff. I've really enjoyed watching Mateychuk. I think even, at the beginning of the season, tiny bit of a slow start offensively, but you could see all the tools were there and it was coming, and then boom, explosion. And Cleveland's been one of the best teams in the league as a result. So very, very positive there. We're going to close it out with the Atlantic Division, and the Atlantic has a much more veteran laden roster. They've got some of those older teams that have the players that are on AHL specific contracts. And so the Atlantic Division has some real interesting guys. Ethan Bear, played in the NHL. It's his first year with the with the Hershey Bears. So Ethan Bear is a Hershey Bear. But he's been outstanding there. Dylan Garand is really having a breakout season for Hartford. I think that this has been his best season as a pro, and so that's a positive thing for a goalie in a system with the Rangers, where obviously you've got Shesterkin. You don't necessarily need some guys, but I think Garand could be the future number 2 there when Jonathan Quick is moved on. But the name that there's also, one of the top prospects on there is Dalibor Dvorsky. He's the highest drafted player in the game, a 10th overall pick of the St. Louis Blues, just played at the World Juniors. But Cam, one guy I wanted to talk about, and the guy that's on the roster that I'm really excited about, is Mikey DiPietro. He has been on a roller coaster of a career. Outstanding junior goalie. I believe he won a Memorial Cup with Windsor, if I'm not mistaken. He goes to pro, and then COVID hits and he's on the taxi squad and he doesn't play for a year, and the Canucks just kind of had him twisting in the wind, and then he is mercifully traded to Boston, had to go start in the ECHL, work his way back for the Maine Mariners. He is now having a career year with the Providence Bruins and is named an All-Star. So you've watched his career. I've watched his career. I had always hoped that this would be the eventual outcome for him. Even if it's not as an NHL goalie, to get this recognition as an AHL All-Star, I think is a great testament to his will, his perseverance, and finding a way to make the best out of a not great situation.
Yeah, all flowers to Mikey D. Like he's another just great kid, great spirit to push back on that, because you're right. Like the Canucks, They sewered him. Like, there's really no way around it. He didn't play a game for like 15 months when he was like 20, 21 years old. And like, what are you doing to a prospect goaltender like that? Like, they need to play games. I get it. The pandemic was weird. You wanted to have these black aces, this taxi squad or whatever around the team, but like, you gotta get him some starts. And then to suffer through it and go down to the E and then come back up to the A and like really try to find himself. And like, he always had an uphill battle, right? As a 5'11" or 6 foot tall goaltender, he was always going to be up against it, but he had the skill and he had the swagger and he had the confidence and that bounce back ability when he let in a bad goal that it's like, you could see that it could have been the case for him. And now, as we see, putting up monster numbers in the A, it's like that door isn't fully closed. He's not going to be a lights out starter in the NHL any one day, but he might be an NHL goaltender here at some point too. And I hope he is, because another really good kid and a really tough story to get past something like that and lose over a year of development through no fault of your own, not even through injury. This is a great story. So good for Mikey D.
Yeah, I'm really excited for him to get this honor and to be playing in Coachella Valley. And, we'll have people there from Flo. You will get a lot more AHL All-Star content from us. We will be on the ground, providing some great features and different things for our fans. And I'll also be providing some additional roster analysis of the AHL All-Star Classic for each division coming very soon. And you'll probably see this video at the top of all of them. So we will be certainly talking about that. But now it is time to talk about Beyond Belief, our segment where each of us go back and forth reading statements to each other, and the other will have to decide if it is accurate or if it is beyond belief. And Cam, I'm going to kick us off because we actually forgot to run this one the last time we were on, and I realized that after we re-recorded. It was, of course, just after Team USA had beaten Canada on New Year's Eve. And just so everybody knows, I'm pretty sure this was your idea. So I'm asking it, but I'm pretty sure this was your idea. So don't hold it against the American guy. But I kind of am excited to hear what Cam has to say. Cam Robinson, Mr. Canada. USA Hockey is the new superpower in international hockey. Is that fact or is that beyond belief?
I think it's fact. Ooh. I don't love it, but I think at this point in time, a couple of World Junior titles. Let's see what happens at the Four Nations, right? They win a Four Nations, I think. The Four Nations face-off, I think we got to be like, all right, fine. If Canada wins that, then it's like, well, Canada's won the last couple U18s, U17s, Holinkas, they bombed out a couple U20s, but they won a couple of goals before that. Maybe we give it back to Canada. But I think right now in this moment, I think USA has a slight edge at the top of being the hockey international power. And like, I don't know what the IHF rankings are right now, but are they the 1 seed? Did they come out of this as the 1 seed? I would imagine so. Maybe we should have looked.
Maybe. I mean, I don't think the U20s counts for it. So, but
no, they won't do that. It's all pro. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like the thing is, so I think there's, to me, I'm a little more skeptical because I know what's, we both know what's coming next. And I think next year's even World Juniors is going to be a lot tougher for USA to win.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I think that we are in the golden age of American hockey in a way that we thought we were in the mid 90s when they won the World Cup of Hockey. When it was Keith Tkachuk and Jeremy Roenick wasn't even on that team, but Chris Chelios and like all those players of that era, Brian Leach, certainly Brett Hull, all that.
Victor,
but
yeah.
But now you're looking and you say you've got Connor Hellebuck, who very well could be the best goalie in the history of best American goalie ever in the league. You've got your number twos are like you have good number 2 goalies. You have good number 3. You've got that. You've got Austin Matthews as a probably the generational American talent. But then you've got the Hughes brothers and Quinn's obviously become one of the best defensemen in the league. So you're seeing guys win. We've still only seen one player win the Hart Trophy, Patrick Kane, in our lifetime. But you've seen more Norris trophies, more Calder trophies go to American-born players, and so I think that there is absolutely validity to that. but I still think that they're, until they do it at the best on best and the Olympic level, we won't be able to say it definitively. But I do think that
Yeah.
there is a trend in a very positive direction for USA Hockey. So I'm a little bit more, a little less bullish, I guess, than you, however. But I would say that I'm very pleased to hear my Canadian friend say that is on. All right, I turn it back over to you, my friend.
Okay. David Carl will be on an NHL bench next season. Beyond belief? Fact? What do you think?
I think he will. I think he will be. And I think for the reasons that you said earlier, there is a certain amount of time that you have to strike while the iron is hot. And I think that his value is will never be higher than it is right now. I think that he will be picky, and I think that he should be picky. I think that he should go probably to one of the bigger market teams, but be at a place where there's a path. And I think that if you're a general manager, you can't just sell him on money. You're going to have to sell him on a vision. And you're going to have to show him how he's going to fit into that vision, because I don't think that he doesn't want something handed to him on a silver platter. What he wants is an opportunity to succeed. And I think that is an important thing. So I think for him, he's not going to move unless it's absolutely the right thing. So, but I just think that there is going to be an opportunity. Like, if the New York Rangers come calling, maybe you say, okay, well, that's a dysfunctional situation. I don't want to be there. Maybe the Chicago Blackhawks come calling and they say, well, we've got, we've got Connor Bedard. We've got this young team. I think those are the places that will potentially be working towards bringing him in. But you look back, like Dallas brought in Jim Montgomery when they were kind of starting ready to get moving up, and other places like that. So if you could find a situation like that and then hold on to it, then you're in good shape. But I think we will see David Carl on an NHL bench. I think that he's a person that enjoys challenges, and I think that I think he'll be a very good coach at the next level. And so the world is his oyster right now. What a position to be in. I think he's going to be a lot richer come this time next year.
I like it. I'm going to say beyond belief, just because I think that, and I maybe not full, not wholeheartedly, but I do think that there's a chance that he does just, the security, the safety, the young family, less, being around young guy, 35, like he'll have lots of options. Is that, I think there's a decent chance that he does. That opportunity, the one that he wants, maybe just doesn't come up yet, right? He gets some offers from some teams where he's like, you know what, not yet. So I'll take the other side on it.
Yeah, dude, don't mess with Happy, right? Sometimes that's the best. Sometimes that is the best move, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think he's an ambitious young man. We'll see what happens next. All right, Mr. Robinson, go ahead and wave your flag if you so choose. I'm going to say Hockey Canada will rebound with a gold medal on U.S. soil in 2026. Fact or beyond belief?
It's just fact, man. Book it. As long as they pick the team that I projected for them, is that they will go into Minnesota and they will be the best team there, and they will come away with gold. And maybe they'll get their own little earplug celebrations after the gold to the American fans and have some fun with that. Get a little swagger back into Canadian hockey. They won't have to fill them in. They can run them up with the talent that they'll have coming, right? They're going to have McKenna. It's going to be McKenna's year. It'd be one more and then that's it. But I expect that Porter Martone, Matt Schaefer, right? These kids are going to be coming back. Sam Dickinson, Berkeley Catton, all their best players. We talked about it at dinner one of those nights. Is like, how many of those Canadian players are we like genuinely predicting to be top 6 forwards or top 4 defensemen? And basically all of them were 17, 18-year-olds, right? Yes. All of the 19-year-olds were like, maybe they're going to be second line wingers, maybe not. Like Cal Ritchie, it's like, yeah, maybe. Easton Cowan, yeah, maybe. But all the 17, 18-year-olds are like, yeah, those guys are going to be top 6s. Now they're going to be 18, 19 years old. And it's going to be their team. They're going to have all sorts of options to bring a lot of talent. They're going to leave some at home. We're going to have some questions about it, but that's just how it is with Canada. But I think that they do rebound. And then all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, everything's fixed. It's all good. They've patched the holes and then we'll have to see 2027 in wherever that's going to be, Slovakia or something, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got, I think maybe Finland. I'm not sure. We've got
a
lot of fun ones coming up here. Yeah. We've got Edmonton and all those other places, and Alberta, I guess, in 2027. 27.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so and I'm actually gonna go ahead and agree. I think Canada will be the favorite going into that tournament. You look, USA has never won this tournament on home soil. And I think that trend will unfortunately continue because it is I was looking at the U.S. roster, and you say, for Canada, I think it's a litany. It's an embarrassment of riches, and for USA, you're really struggling to even find a third and fourth line center at this
Mhm.
point. So it's going to be tough. I think the decor will be better, but I think the goaltending is a big question mark as well because Trey Augustine moves on. So I think the stage is set for Canada to be the favorite on American soil. So I turn it back to you, my friend, so we can close out this segment.
No top 2025 picks will play in the NHL next season. And I was trying to think of like when the last time that happened, right? Like we know Owen Power got drafted first overall, went back to school. EJ, Eric Johnson, years before that, first overall didn't go, but like it is very rare. But I'm looking at, Schaefer, Hagens, Martone, Misa. Like none of them will be in the NHL next season. Fact or fiction, or beyond belief or fiction or fact?
I believe I know what you were saying.
You got me
I
there.
got
Yeah. Yeah.
I am gonna I mean I'm gonna say that it is accurate that we will not see it. I think that if Schaefer was healthy, I probably would have said that's a kid who's got a chance.
Mhm.
If I think if Hagens had a more dominant World Juniors and has been a more dominant college player, I would say yes. If Martone was putting it all together and is more than just a big body with high end skill and lots of potential, I would say yes. But then you kind of look down and you say, okay, well, I don't see any defensemen there. It'd be very strange if, say, like a re-entry or somebody else there's always somebody that kind of jumps out and
Yeah.
finds a way. We didn't think Zach Benson was going to be an immediate NHL player, so those things happen from time to time. But at this stage of our process, I don't see a single guy that walks into an NHL team and helps them next year. And that way, and for me, that's why I think it's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's Matt Schaefer, right? If he had played 50 games, even
Yes.
as a super young kid,
Yes.
I think he could go into camp. I think he still could go into camp and look so good that a team's like, screw it, we're keeping him. But I think long term to benefit him, I think he should go back and like the same with Hagens, right? Like I thought Will Smith probably should have stayed another year at BC and he put up 60 points last year. Hagens
Right.
isn't going to sniff anywhere near that, right? So it's yeah, I think that one's going to be super interesting to see if we have any first rounders step straight into the NHL.
Yeah. So, boy, it's interesting. That's this draft class. It's been a little tough. It's been a little tough to get super excited about it. But anyway, we're gonna close out the show with our very last segment. And every week we like to give each other the challenge of an either or kind of situation. Or in the last few episodes we did medal predictions, but this time we're going back to the original idea of either or. And after a spectacular World Junior Championship, and after now being brothers on the front end and the back end of back to backs, Mr. Cam Robinson, today I present to you the choice. You are building a team, and you've got a chance to add one of these players to your blue line. Are you picking Lane Hutson or Cole Hutson? We've got a battle of the Hutsons. Cam Robinson, your answer, please.
Lane Hutson. No hesitation. No hesitation. He's more dynamic, I think, laterally. The four-way mobility, I think his playmaking's higher. And I mean, the kid's on pace for like 60 assists or something as a rookie in the show. Give me that security already. But no, I think he's more agile. He's more dynamic. I think Cole's got the shot. He's got him beat on the shot, but he's kind of like I've referred to him as like kind of that PC version of Lane, the President's Choice version. He's closed that gap, and I'll give him credit for that. Is that he is better than I thought he was. He isn't as far away from Lane's talent level, but you just look at the numbers, right? Everywhere they played similar spots, Lane has outproduced what Cole has done, and I think that'll be the same in the NHL. Both basically the same size, play the same style of game. Cole's a little chippier, probably, which will help him mitigate a little bit of the skill that he's missing. But yeah, give me Lane all day. How about you?
Yeah, my pick is Lane as well, but I do want to just take a minute just to talk about the Cole. And you mentioned some of the differences. The shot is better. There's a bit more of an aggressive meanness to him. I think he's a
Hmm.
bit more of a has a bad attitude on the ice in the right way. You know what I mean? Like it's not that
Yeah.
he's, but he influences the game that way. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's a difference in terms of the hands, the vision, different things. But I think the hockey sense is way closer than I thought it was before. I thought Lane was a mile ahead, but I've seen more
Yeah.
from Cole over the years and the vision. I mean, there were a couple plays he made in overtime and in the third period of that game that could have ended the game right there just because he found a guy that I didn't even know was on the ice. Like, and I'm
Hmm.
I'm watching the game from up top. I'm like, how the heck did he see that? So those are really special qualities, and I think that the thing is that Cole drafted a little bit earlier than Lane was. He's not going to have the level of production that we saw from Lane. But I do think that you're looking at two guys that do not fit the draft profile or the NHL regular profile of a defenseman in terms of their size and their physicality. Yet they are, and at every step of the way have exceeded expectations. And you also have to remember Lane is the all-time leading scorer among defensemen, or Cole rather is the all-time leading scorer among defensemen at the National Team Development Program. So he
Right.
has had a history of production as well. So these are two guys. So if you are the Montreal Canadiens, congratulations to you. And if you're the Washington Capitals, congratulations to you because you already have them. And Cole, I think, is so motivated to beat Lane out that is
Yeah.
the one thing that I think is that intangible thing. He wants to be better. And that is kind of an interesting dynamic of that little brother dynamic. And so I cannot wait to follow their careers. And I'm always, a couple of Chicago area kids. I love the Chicago area kids on top of that. I'd adopt them both if I could. But we had to pick one. And so Lane is sorry, Cole. But yes, it goes Lane. So that is going to do it for this week's episode. It's been a long one, and we thank you for sticking with us for it. But Cam, what can we be looking for on elite prospects before we get out of here?
Same stuff as always, guys. Go get that app first and foremost. It's awesome. But yeah, we're gonna do another draft meeting coming up. Drop a new post World Junior rankings. Yeah, this is our great coverage, right? We'll be checking in on all the markets around different scouting communities here. We'll do our Euro breakdowns and our CHL breakdowns and see whose stock's going up, whose stock's going down. Just a lot of great content coming as we gear up to the push to the finish here. It always goes by fast. Once you hit the new year, you think you still have a lot of time, but before you know it, we'll be in Frisco for the U18s and finalizing our list heading into the LA draft.
Yep, and I think, hey, great job to you guys on your World Junior coverage as well. It was great to follow, and certainly awesome to share a press box with you and Lauren, and seeing all the great work that you guys were putting out. And then over on FloHockey, we're going to have back to our regularly scheduled programming with our AHL, ECHL, college hockey, junior hockey content that you will find all the time. Also, get ready for that AHL All-Star Classic, February 2nd and 3rd. You'll be able to watch that on FloHockey. And we will have great coverage of that event, including roster analysis about the guys that we talked about earlier coming up soon. But we'll be back next week with another edition of Called Up, the Prospects Podcast. Huge thanks to Cam. Huge thanks to you. Huge thanks to Ever, who produced today, and everybody that has made this a great podcast so far. Please leave your kind rating and reviews on your podcast app of choice, and make sure you catch us over on the FloSports app or on YouTube at FloHockey. Lots more to come. We are going to be talking a lot of NHL draft here in the next couple of weeks as Cam and I start bearing down on these second half lists and other things that we have coming. And then it's almost mock draft season. Geez, there's so much stuff coming up. But Cam, hope it's great to be back home. I hope that you enjoy the family time. But we got a lot of work to do coming up. So we'll catch you next week, buddy. Thanks again for another great episode.
Cheers, pal. We'll talk soon.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Called Up. For Cam Robinson, I'm Chris Peters. We will see you soon.